Hello and welcome to Career Coaching After Hours. I'm your host, John Davidson, and it's already episode 28. It's March 2026. Thank you for joining me. I'm very excited for this episode because once again, I'm diving into who are the best employers in the Pacific Northwest. And since I'm a career coach and counselor based here in the Pacific Northwest, just north of the Seattle area, I wanted to do another deep dive into what makes the PNW special in terms of employers and culture and all these wonderful organizations that we have that are based here. So this time I took a very different approach than 2025. So I hope you like the way I stack ranked everybody and tried to look at some different dimensions of what it really means to be an amazing employer. And of course, work is so central to what we do as humans. And so often I work with folks who are really looking for a better midpoint or their ikigai or what fills their cup in terms of finding a new role or a new career path, whether that's getting paid better or maybe finding work that's more rewarding, maybe a little bit of all of those things. And you kind of see that ikigai diagram there on the whiteboard. There we go, and who doesn't love bearded dragons with Seahawks hats? So we'll have some fun with this one as well. So again, thank you for joining me. If you're new to the series, thank you. Please like, please subscribe. If you've been watching, I appreciate it. So this is audience agnostic, so you may or may not be my client. And so generally I started this series as a way for me to talk through issues I deal with my career coaching and counseling clients, but also dig a little bit deeper into some topics I care about or that I think are worth a little bit more of a deep dive, or perhaps I've written on it a bit. So again, this isn't specific information or advice for you, but I do hope you find it useful. And as usual, everything is to the best of my knowledge. Feel free to check out my credentials and background before you dig deep and listen to what I've got to say about all these topics. But here we go. Here's some alternative artwork. And I talk about Venn diagrams and the ikigai diagram and that concept of really balancing the elements of how you work in terms of what is the mission of the organization? Is that in alignment with your beliefs and your strengths and your capabilities? Are you doing work that's rewarding? And hopefully you're getting compensated well for that work, whether you're self-employed or whether you work for another organization. But we could make a pretty broad generalization that most of us either are self-employed or we work for an employer. We're part of some kind of an organization, public or private sector, what have you. But I've done this thought experiment with clients many times over the years, like what if you could actually create your own job fair or career fair? Who would you invite? So this is a graphic I created a little while back. If I could wave a magic wand and create a really cool job fair or career fair here in the Seattle area or Western Washington, these would be some organizations I might invite. And a lot of folks tell me they don't go to job fairs because they can't choose who's there. Or maybe they feel like that's for only individuals who are really early in their career. But kind of this idea of stacking the deck, like where might you want to work, whether that's making video games at Nintendo or Valve, or maybe doing something related to professional athletics with the Seahawks or the Mariners or the Reign or something like that, or some of the really cool companies we have here in the Pacific Northwest, whether that's Wizards of the Coast or Funko or REI, companies known for something really cool and unique, maybe geeky or nerdy, or companies like Helion that are changing the world, or Blue Origin that are dealing with nuclear fusion or spaceships. So let's dig in a little bit. Last year, and you can take a look at my website if you want to see what I did, I bracketed everything, kind of March Madness style. So I made 5 brackets with 32 teams, as it were, and tried to come up with a list of best employers that wasn't just the big bigs or kind of the same entrants over and over again. So I tried to come up with a pretty good solid list of opportunities so clients at least had a starting point to maybe get some of the creative juices flowing. But it was really limiting, and even 160 employers spread out through Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Vancouver, BC, what have you, even arguably Alaska and Montana. Very difficult. And so this time around, I didn't even bother tracking the number. And what I tried to do is look at this kind of dimensionally, because I felt like I still left a lot of really great employers off of that list. So this gets to some of my thought experiments and exercises with clients as well. How do we think outside the box? Maybe think of a different type of employer, a different field, or a different industry. So let's dig in here a little bit. I hope these help you. Of course, I'm posting this here on YouTube, but I'll probably add this up to the website as well. But I think this is just as useful wherever you live in the United States. So again, I'm here in the PNW, and so pretty much anywhere you live, probably you're not incredibly far from some Fortune 500s, right? So this is one of the classic rankings of not so much necessarily the greatest employers because they're amazing places to work, but because they're big and they're massive. And really difficult to be in the Seattle area or in the Pacific Northwest and not talk about these employers. They're fan favorites, they're big, they're massive. Even now, we expect that 2026 here, Amazon is going to take the #1 spot. So these numbers are as of 2025, the official numbers. So Amazon just nudged past Walmart. But there's some of the big biggies. Amazon and Costco and Microsoft and Albertsons, Nike, there's Starbucks, there's Micron, there's Nordstrom, there's Lululemon, there's Expedia. Really, really large organizations. Pretty diverse, and you could say that's one of the strengths of the Pacific Northwest. I've said this many times, and I think the evidence is pretty clear that the PNW is a hub of subject matter experts in a whole range of issues, not just cloud or IT or software, but aerospace, apparel, retail, logistics, a whole host of areas here. So these are great organizations, but I thought let's start with the very, very largest. That kind of pulls out many of these organizations. Of course, I could put into some of these other categories, but let's start here and I'll dive in a little deeper. These are the Fortune 501 plus. So Fortune does track this up to 1,000, and there's some other wonderful brands that you may have heard of. And it's so interesting. Here we are I'm in the state of Washington, and across the Pacific Northwest, I mean, we're a hub of timber and food production, apples, jams, berries, all these wonderful things that we produce here. All these creative companies, whether you see like Columbia Sportswear, and I'll dig into that here a little bit too. But I think these are some great organizations too. But statistically, they're ranked. So I extracted those out for folks to think about. Many times I work with folks who may or may not want to work for a really large organization. So something to think about, some food for thought. I'm a big fan of Fortune magazine, and that ranking I think has a lot of value. So if we move on though, one of my favorite blocks of companies to look at, or organizations I should say, employers, and so we look at pure Pacific Northwest style fun. And so these are companies that I think have captured the spirit and the heart of whether it's pop culture or geek culture, nerd culture, what have you, or just so epic because of what they do. They sell joy, they sell happiness, you could say. So of course you've got Nintendo of America, headquartered in Redmond. You got the Pokemon Company in Bellevue, Wizards of the Coast, even though they're owned by Hasbro, of course they do Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons. You've got Valve, which manages the largest portal for folks to buy PC games in Steam. So really epic organizations. There's Bungie, there's Sub Pop, created the entire grunge revolution, Funko, Powell's Books, but so many times I talk to folks about this idea of aligning your interests and your hobbies and what you enjoy doing as possibly a vehicle to explore work itself. So it's a thought. And these companies, I think this kind of small group of companies, their organizations, do make the PNW very special. And there's the Museum of Pop Culture as well. And who doesn't love Archie McPhee and Boo Radleys? They're wonderful toy stores. There we go. And of course, it may go without saying, but I'll say it, that really all of these buckets or these brackets, these dimensions, I've left several very good organizations off of this list. At a certain point, I just kind of had to cut it off. So don't throw any rocks at my head if you see an organization that's really amazing that I left off. Let's just leave that as a bit of a caveat. But yet another really neat dimension that I talk to clients about pretty regularly, and I just posted a job with the Rain and the Sounders, for example, is athletics. And of course, the Seattle Seahawks just won the Super Bowl, so it's pretty epic. And hopefully we get our Sonics back here pretty soon. But I'm just consistently amazed by how many different opportunities there are with major athletic clubs, and whether you love soccer or football or hockey or baseball or basketball. Even rugby and cricket have gotten more fans here in the Pacific Northwest, so it's interesting to see this expansion. And now we've got, of course, the women's hockey team with the Torrent in there as well, so it's really neat to see the expansion of different sports, women's leagues, and Seattle has truly become a world-class destination for sports. So I do hope we get the Sonics back at some point. I think that would help establish some more street cred for Seattle and the PNW as a whole. They can take on those Trailblazers once in a while, but something to think about. Again, when you think of these as buckets or dimensions, maybe spark some ideas or some interests in your own career search. But when we think about the Pacific Northwest, in my opinion, feel free to agree or disagree, one of our real strengths isn't just the diversity of the Fortune 500s and our really large employers. That's true. It's a very diverse set of ecosystems we have here in the Pacific Northwest as well. Wonderful natural resources, hub of learning and knowledge. But this tremendously creative, tactical, this engineering mindset. So I felt that a dimension of organizations really has to deal with the kind of tactical, developing not just outdoor gear, but genuinely useful products you see in stores all the time, but organizations that promote that. So, for example, REI, not a Fortune 500, they're a co-op, but incredibly well known, and they, I think, stock just about all of these products. But you have FLIR doing infrared. You have Arc'teryx making some of the most rugged gear out there with outdoor research, and Sorel. You have fitness equipment like Precor in seems like every gym on Earth. You've got a really strong kind of these almost subcultures in not just Seattle but also Portland, like Gerber and Leatherman and Benchmade tools. So we have so many bright, intelligent, engineering, artistically minded individuals in our region. And of course, who doesn't have a hydro flask or a Stanley quencher of some kind when they're hitting the gym? But if even you think through products that you love and you like that ethos of creativity, PNW has a lot to offer. So I think that's a really interesting dimension to compare and contrast here as we dig deep here. And there's Brooks Running. Oh my gosh, I love their shoes. Did I mention I love their shoes? Another dimension that I don't know if I did a great job last year, because I felt like I took some of the really big universities, put them on the list, but of course we have all these wonderful community colleges, and we have wonderful private universities and colleges as well. But higher education is arguably one of the most critical elements of what keeps the Pacific Northwest competitive. So we have just this year, Seattle's received the ranking of best educated city in the United States. Pretty darn impressive, and that's arguably thanks to wonderful public schools and private schools at the K-12 level, but then that feed into these really powerful systems of higher education. So thank you, big thanks to all these organizations, whether you love the Huskies or the Cougars or the Ducks, what have you, but also wonderful employers as well. And so I kind of elbow clients once in a while, well, what about going to work in the higher education sphere, perhaps? Maybe leveraging that interest of love, that love and interest of learning and teaching. Maybe even for UW, number 8 university in the world. There we go. All right, next dimension, bucket number 7. Spoiler alert, we've got 11 of these, so we've got a few more to roll through. But this is one of my favorites too. It's really hard for me to pick favorites here, but I felt like a really important dimension is a bit of a hodgepodge, this idea of saving the world in some ways. And not just nonprofits, but not just public health organizations, not just foundations, maybe all of them. in kind of a large bucket or bracket, whatever you'd like to call it. So you see I've got some qualifiers in here, but these are some tremendously wonderful organizations fighting cancer, fighting public health issues, trying to cure AIDS, trying to make sure that we have clean water, not just here, but in other countries. So a few of my very favorites you see there in some of the logos. There's PATH, there's the Hutch, Pivotal Ventures, and the Gates Foundation, B'nai Tara, Enatai, Ronald McDonald House and Urban League. Many nonprofits have branches in multiple cities. So instead of kind of the friendly rivalry of Seattle and Portland, I put them all in the same bucket. But you have like the Allen Institute studying brain science and all kinds of wonderful issues, like whale migrations and environmental issues, through even Seattle Children's, saving the lives of children, Boys and Girls Club, CHC, Food Lifeline. There's Earth Corps, one of my very favorites. So if you really do want to save children, animals, the environment, you want cleaner air and water, you want to see be the change that you want to see in the world, as Gandhi reminds us, these are some wonderful organizations to consider, right? Whether they're in the public health sphere or perhaps a foundation or a nonprofit, but something to think about. And sometimes I get a little miffed when I see best employers lists, and a lot of times I don't see a lot of nonprofit representation or small organization representation. So part of these projects are maybe because I'm a little bit grouchy about some of the regular average best employers list that I see out there. All right, so bucket 8, distinctly Pacific Northwest. There are actually 2 parts to this bracket here, but again, some of my very, very favorites, but in many cases I felt like they didn't quite fit in another bracket. So I felt like we had to have this bracket where maybe they're not a foundation or a nonprofit, maybe it's not necessarily pop culture, but could we imagine living in the Pacific Northwest without them? I would say no, I would argue no. So what defines a region? Is it Tasty Zips and Dick's Hamburgers? Is it Delano's Roasters and Ladro, some of the small independent coffee chains that compete with Starbucks? Is it Dave's Killer Bread? Is it shopping at Fred Meyer? Is it Bumbershoot or Emerald City Comic Con? These wonderful events that are very well known regionally. Well, you make that decision. But I will absolutely posit, and I believe this to be very true, that if you want a gift basket from the Pacific Northwest, you will get a more epic gift basket than anywhere else in the United States, than any other region. I challenge anywhere else. The Southwest, the Northeast, the Midwest, the Southeast. Could you beat the Pacific Northwest? I don't know. We've got Chucker Cherries. Oh my gosh. We've got Aaron Baker's breakfast cookies. We've got Talking Rain. All these wonderful, wonderful brands. So again, this idea of brand alignment, right? There are so many more employers than Microsoft, Amazon, Boeing, Starbucks, the really big bigs. So, and I should say thank you to all these wonderful employers for making our region amazing. So, again, I left many, many brands off of this, but I had fun making this. So you might be able to tell this bucket overflowed. So I had to do a whole separate slide on this one. And what's so interesting sometimes is when we try to think of best employers, sometimes it's really hard to put them in any other bucket but a catch-all. So for example, T-Mobile, you have the parent company based in Germany, but it's a massive telecom company, but they don't pop up on the Fortune 500, even though they're based in Bellevue. Wonderful employer. But some, even like KEXP, wonderful radio station, or Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, or Krusty's, the Seattle Times, all these epic organizations we couldn't imagine not having, but yet many times I just don't see them on your kind of classic run-of-the-mill best employers list. So food for thought. And yes, I know Liberty Mutual bought Safeco, but I still love Doug and the Limu Emu, so I put them in there. So there's that. So there's that. Bucket 9, or dimension number 9. And this is one I nudge a lot of folks to think about, is what about foundational organizations? Not just government so much, like cities or counties or the state itself or even the federal government, But what about police departments? What about fire departments, utilities, emergency response? It's really interesting when you kind of dig into where you live and how do you get power and water. What happens if you need your house doused with water? That doesn't happen automatically. Or when we send our children off to schools, these things don't happen automatically. And I'm certainly guilty of that too. You can drive down the roads, you turn the tap on in your kitchen. Where does the water come from? Who maintains these roads? Well, it's foundational. So again, big thank you to all the municipal, county, and state and federal government employees and all the folks taking care of these foundational needs where civil society would just not be any fun with these types of organizations. But even in my own ranking, I felt like these maybe got short shrift. Maybe were not represented as well. So of course, this is not an exhaustive list of every industry or every employer, but I think they deserve their own bracket or bucket. And yet another one that I love quite a bit is this idea, this next level bracket here too. So if there is a ranking that I consistently like to look at, it's the GeekWire 200. So it's this ranking of really the up and coming hot commodity brands and companies that are changing the world, whether it's Helion with fusion energy, or Brink drones, or reusable rockets with Stoke Space, or Tin Can developing safe phones that are for children and designed to protect young adults. So really interesting business models, everything from spaceships and robots and lasers and nanomachines and putting AI in everything. But it's a pretty large list. And many times when I work with clients, there might be maybe a concern that, well, if I join a startup, will it still be here? Or how long would I have to work there before those stock options are fully vested, or will make me a millionaire overnight? But I think absolutely worth it to consider what the mission is of that employer. So often there's that crucial linkage, that intersectionality, that intersection of your beliefs and what you want to do with your career and how good you feel about your employer, what their mission is. But I just felt we had a lot of other employers who weren't quite on that list, like, for example, Blue Origin. So we have literally space jobs right here in Washington, and Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin outfit doing wonderful things, competing with SpaceX, but based here. But it's interesting how they kind of don't fall onto the GeekWire list or the Fortune 500 list. So I don't think there can truly be any one ultimate list of best employers without trying to look really expansively. But then you see some other tech companies that I hold in really high regard, and even some up-and-coming companies too, like Portal Space Systems in Bothell. So looking to rapidly expand. So something to consider. And last but absolutely not least, this is one I struggled with last time around, is thinking about what employers are truly amazing, but focusing only on employers that are based in the Pacific Northwest. So some of the obvious ones like Boeing and Philips, who have a tremendous impact on the Western Washington economy and the Pacific Northwest economy, technically not based here, so they don't pop up on those kind of classic radars. And GeekWire, to their credit, also has this really neat ranking of basically companies that are very well known, like Google and Meta and Apple, that do have engineering mini bases or mini headquarters here. So always interesting to see, like on LinkedIn, well, you might see a job at Adobe or Apple or Duolingo that is absolutely based in Seattle or Bellevue, which is interesting. So that doesn't require a relocation. And of course, Boeing's still doing lots of great things here in Washington State. I still contend that Seattle is Jet City. I don't care what anybody else says. But lots of other up-and-coming companies like Anduril or Anthropic, the makers of Claude, that absolutely have these mini outposts up here. So something else to consider, that maybe you can work for brands you really love or companies you really love, but maybe you don't have to relocate somewhere else. Aha, if that's not in the cards. And anytime I can pitch Duolingo, why the heck not? So there we be, 11 dimensions to define the greatest employers. And if you actually added all those up for me, send me the number because I lost count. But I hope that helps maybe orient or engineer or architect your career search, or maybe helps you come up with some ideas as far as where you might want to work. Where would you align your time, your efforts, your blood, sweat, and tears as you work and as you build your career. So hope you thought that was interesting, as helpful. I enjoyed making this episode, and I think this is going to become a regular, recurring, yearly episode. So let me know what you think. Yeah, leave some comments. I love likes. I love subscribe. Absolutely feel free to reach out to me directly, John, John, @olympicresume.com, if you'd like to reach out through email. Thank you for all of these wonderful artists for providing the music, so you don't have to listen to my nasally voice the whole time. Eek. Take a look and check out their websites. And of course, thank you. I appreciate your time very much. Thank you to my clients. Thank you, viewers. Thank you, supporters. Appreciate it. All right. I'll see you on the next episode. Have a great one. Hope your March was great. And here's to a wonderful Q2 2026. All right. Be well. Thank you. Bye-bye.